What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Starfield not being playable at Gamescom and if that's a problem or not. So, a few days ago, we talked about the idea of people talking about versus not talking about Starfield, and where I landed on it just super fast was I think the fans have been talking about this game a ton. I think they've been keeping it going for the past couple months. Bethesda did their thing in early June, and since then, yeah, they haven't really given us all that much stuff. I do expect August to be the turnaround. I think this is where you would get those early previews or, whatever, a couple hours maybe being shown or given to the IGNs of the world. But I do understand with the idea that, okay, well, they're not exactly pushing it. And the Gamescom thing, well, it kind of goes back and forth in my mind. My initial thing is I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I feel like my reasoning for it would maybe be different than some of what I've seen online. Although I have seen kind of like a checklist or, like a dotted list of all the reasons that it potentially could be. Number one, and this is something that I do think maybe has some validity to it, these are demos like 20, 25, 30 minutes, maybe even 15-minute demos on the show floor, right? So these are really, really quick little things from the game that you're walking on the floor, in this case Gamescom, but it would be at E3 or whatever, and you play the game just to kind of get a hang of it or to get a feel for it. I do think Bethesda games are pretty tough to kind of sell people on 15 minutes of, and that is an excuse or a reason, whatever you want to, I guess, call it, depending on how you view it, right? That I've seen people say, well, maybe that's one of the reasons why they haven't done it, is that their games don't really work in 15, 20-minute segments, and so why even kind of bother having it there? I know optically, like from the outside, again, you can see the stuff online, people aren't really thrilled with it, and I understand. I think the general idea of why people are mad at it not being there is that Gamescom is just like a week before, the early access. So by the time Gamescom is over, by the time people would have been able to, say, play it if it was on the show floor, maybe 4 or 5 days later, you'd be able to play it in early access. So the question would be, are they hiding it? Are they hiding it just to hide it? Or are they hiding it because of bugs or issues or whatever? And then again, you can have kind of the other reasonings or excuses depending on how you look at it. One thing I've seen that brings PlayStation into it, but I actually think you can kind of stretch it to not be like a console warrior. That part of it is, okay, well, PlayStation's not even going, right? So the fact that Starfield is even there in the first place, even though it's not playable, and games like Stalker 2 and those games are playable, that's already, say, like an advantage Xbox. I'd like to throw in that it could just be a combination of it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter people playing it on the show floor at Gamescom. I know I've seen some people from within the industry say, look, it takes time to do stuff like this too. Not only is, the 15, 20-minute thing, maybe this game, maybe Bethesda games, maybe Starfield doesn't really work in that kind of atmosphere, but also it takes time to maybe that's basically a demo, right? You're making a demo of the game, and oftentimes you'd probably do it before, like a week before the game comes out, right? Maybe you would have done it around E3 time, and so maybe they just don't have the manpower. Maybe they're focusing just fully on the game. I think, honestly, if I'm going to give a reason or an excuse, I'd like to probably combine that along with the whole potentially not caring. I think, post stuff around the world, right, how everything kind of shook down and everything kind of got built back up, these things probably just aren't as important as they used to be. In fact, we know that because those in-person kind of events, like the E3s of the world, aren't even a thing anymore, really. Gamescom is actually the last of that kind of era. Jeff Keighley, of course, is trying to bring it back, and Summer Game Fest has some, playable things. There are those things still around somewhat, but not as big as it used to be. So I think it could be a mix of it doesn't make sense to do it anymore, widespread. Also, it takes people away from the game. You want all hands on deck focusing on the game. So again, to me, it's not that big of an issue. Now, I will say, 100%, I would give it to you. If the game comes out, and I've actually talked about this in separate videos, one of the most important things that this game needs to do is not come out broken. If it comes out and it's a complete buggy disaster, well, number one, that's just bad in general. It's going to look really, really bad. And then number two, yes, I think you can go backwards and say, all right, were they afraid of showing this thing off at events before? I 1000% would give that to you, and I think that would be the reason. Right now, looking at it, without it happening yet, because, there's also a chance that the game comes out, and yes, maybe it's a little buggy. I highly doubt the game is going to run flawlessly. I think that's kind of impossible. But overall, generally, it's okay. If that happens, then I would actually side more with Gamescom, the E3s of the world. They're not important to these companies anymore, and they don't want to take manpower away from the game to bring it there, to have it be playable, to make the demo in the first place. It's not necessary anymore, and they just don't do it anymore. You might also be able to get a vibe depending on how this month plays out. Next week is the first full week of August. As I said, I'm going to feel more kind of comfortable as this month goes on if they start to talk about it more, if they start to show it more. If you do get IGN that does like the final preview and they played 4 hours of it, or whatever, those kind of things I think is kind of necessary at least this month. I don't think you needed to have done it in July or June. I know some people think you did, but for me, as long as you do something in August, I think it's fine. But I do think, yeah, if it comes out and it's a disaster, I think you can kind of work backwards and say, this is probably why they didn't let people see it. They didn't let people play it. It's because they were afraid of showing off the game. I think that's a valid concern for sure. That's just not how I'm going to look at it, at least right now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to support me anywhere else, all my social media, including my other YouTube channels, our Twitter, our Discord, all that's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.